Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So, stay with us as right now we present. Do you want to have a good cup of coffee? Do you want to read a good book while you're having that good cup of coffee? The gentleman, the gentleman that we have with us can do all of that and so much more. Patrick Greenwood is with us. He's the author of the book Sunrise in Saigon, and the book's doing very, very well. He also is working with a coffee company out of Vietnam, and he sent me some, and it was delicious, I have to say. It was really good. So, Patrick, thank you for coming back on the show. How are you today?
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you again. Glad you liked the coffee.
I did indeed, and I haven't read the book quite yet, but I'm going to be, and I'm real pleased that things are going well for you. The book is being very well received. The reviews are terrific, and you've got a sequel coming as well as an audiobook. Let's talk about those things.
So the audiobook is actually coming out on Audible. I'm expecting it probably the later part of March, early May. I'm going to let that kind of come out for maybe March, April, May, maybe June. I originally was going to release Codename Dragon Vault, which is the sequel to Sunrise in Saigon, in July. I may consider moving that out probably to March, September, October timeframe, because I do want the audiobook to get out and have people experience it. I have a wonderful publisher and writer based in Oklahoma, Amy Lee, who is actually the publisher and CEO of Quahog Publishing. She is actually a Vietnam survivor. She was a refugee. She actually escaped Vietnam when she was a little girl. She's actually the one doing the audio for the book. So I'm very excited to hear it when she's done. But I'm very excited to have that coming out as well.
I got to tell you, you are doing some really good things with the latest thing. But this is the first novel that you've written, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What did you do in your prior life before you decided to do this and make no money?
Well, actually, I do make money because I actually write for a living. And my father asked me that exact same question when I retired from cybersecurity after 28 years. He goes, "What are you doing? You're writing? Does it pay?" I'm like, "Yes, Dad, it does pay. You can make money writing." Yes, you can. So I actually write professionally. I do write blogs and white papers and ebooks for customers about cybersecurity and blockchain. And that's kind of my livelihood. The writing of the books and novels is fun. Selling coffee, as you know, is helping to promote helmets for kids in Vietnam, and the proceeds of the book also goes to the charity as well. But I love writing. But I did spend a great more of my adult life in cybersecurity and technology.
Well, and tell us about the coffee and how it's helping the kids in Vietnam. I just love this story.
So actually, the coffee company is called PsychoWriter3Espresso.com. I actually released the coffee last June. I sell it online through the website, PsychoWriter3Espresso.com. And all proceeds of the coffee and also the commemorative mugs all go to help a helmet for kids in Vietnam. So it helps support the charities as well. And of course, all the proceeds of the book of Sunrise in Saigon also goes to help the helmets for kids. Now, I had the pleasure of obviously getting a helmet delivered to me from Vietnam after they made one. So not only do they put my logo on it, but currently I've provided enough funding for almost 2,000 helmets this year to help support the kids as well.
Oh, that is just outstanding. Now tell us about, if you haven't been to Vietnam, tell us about why it's important for kids to have a helmet on their bike in Vietnam.
Well, I got to tell you, in America, we see a lot of kids running around with e-bikes and they're weaving in and out of traffic with cars. But, the thing is, our roads are built for cars and bikes and trucks and buses, things like that. In Vietnam, they're built for pull carts. They're built for scooters. They're not built for cars. So now in the last, 7, 8 years, you now have cars on the road, trucks on the road, and the roads are not widened. It's still the same, So imagine a 6-year-old child trying to get to school and weaving in and out of the same traffic 8 million scooters are weaving out of. So Helmets for Kids actually started in 2000 by President Bill Clinton when he made his trip to Vietnam for the first time. And he got involved because he saw the importance of, what are we doing to really kind of, keep these kids safe, because they were obviously having lots of fatalities and challenges. So he was actually one of the first original people to help put the program together. And obviously, and one of the most important news was in 2019, Global Globe winner and potential Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh became the global ambassador of Helmet for Kids. So obviously, I'm cheering for her on the Academy Awards this year, but she became the global ambassador as well. And obviously, that does show that there's a lot of people in the world that do care of what's going on. Obviously, I love getting involved and love contributing as well to help buy more helmets for the kids.
You just mentioned that Bill Clinton went there in what, 2000?
2000, yes.
Yeah, and I want to remind, because some of our audience is a little bit younger. I vividly remember 1975 when when the helicopters left the Saigon and the ambassadorship in Saigon and took off, and we effectively lost that war and withdrew. And but there are people that don't really know what Vietnam was like, and and is there still a North and a South Vietnam? Are they consolidated? And then they're next to Laos, which has had lots and lots of troubles and stuff. So now tell us a little bit more about that part of the world.
Well, so obviously you're correct. After April 30th in 1975, the images of most Americans that were watching the television news back then watched the helicopters taking off with lots of people storming the gate at the embassy trying to get a ride out. And Marines were there, trying to defend the gate and trying to tell people no, and they were trying to hold people back, but people were very desperate because they didn't know what was going to happen with the North Vietnamese coming south, and the South, pretty much the South Vietnam government collapsed. And then after April 30th, that when we look at April 30th, we think of it, that's where we lost the war. They look at it as their day of unification. So bad, good, anything in between, that it became one Vietnam after that. And I think on the last show, you and I got to talk about, well, what made this war any different than Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait and all the other problems of the world? They said there was a closure. But right, wrong, or indifferent, painfully, however it may play out, the reality is that when that day happened, there was closure. There was a way of moving forward. Now, how they move forward and some of the trials and tribulations they faced was, obviously a lot of atrocities as well. But when they got into the more the 1980s, Vietnam started identifying itself as a country. And now it didn't exactly open its borders and didn't exactly turn on, the trade switch, but it made some steps towards it. I mean, people started getting educated and they started looking themselves as one country because they did allow time to sort of get over the end of the war. And now if you go there today, it's an incredible country. It's high tech. It's got education. It has some of the brightest minds. And many of the people that have left there came here to get educated. Many of them have gone back to try to contribute back to the country as well. So I think it has been an example of how a country can turn itself around.
So, perspective is interesting in a case like this because from our perspective, we lost the war and it was, it was a really bad day. From their perspective, it was Independence Day.
Yes.
Yes,
very much.
That's really cool. And even though they had a lot of atrocities and so many people died in that war, from both us and from France, and I think
Yes.
wasn't China or Russia there before?
China was there. Well, France was there, of course, in the 50s. China contributed, Russia contributed, Cuba contributed. Obviously, we contributed, the South Koreans contributed as well. There was a lot of countries involved. A lot of people don't realize that it wasn't just, US GIs and South Vietnamese and North Vietnamese. There was a lot of other countries that had a vested interest in that country because of its resources. And that's like, I had a chance to be on another podcast a couple months ago, and one of the comments that someone asked me, or questions asked me, was, "What made Vietnam so well?" I said, "Rubber, Michelin." I mean, oil. I mean, you go back to the 30s, and the fact that Japan needed to invade to go after the oil. So it is a very rich country from a resource perspective, and everyone has tried to conquer it, and everyone has pretty much failed miserably about it.
Well, and they also were, as many parts of the world are, they are a tribal society. They've got several tribes in there that have had to, and talk a little bit about that, because there are some parts of the world, Afghanistan comes to mind,
Yes.
where the tribes are not cohesive. You've got
Yeah.
the different groups and stuff. How did Vietnam come together under one heading of a country when there were so many tribes that were out and about?
Well, they actually, one of the things that's interesting today when you travel from north to south, everyone within the country, for the most part, believes it's their country. They feel like they're part of something. A lot of the remote tribes you're talking about, especially the ones in the Central Highlands and kind of the upper mountain areas, that they were so behind the times in civilization that they welcomed innovation, they welcomed roads, they welcomed schools. They knew it came at a price though, because now they're part of a communist, kind of structure. But they have opened up several years ago the idea of privatization, of homes, privatization of people attending schools. The healthcare system is very, very good. You can go from a doctor to a regional hospital to a provisional hospital and get treatment. So they really have done some things that are very interesting. Now, they do have their issues with human rights, of course, like most countries do, but they, for the most part, have really made an effort to try to be part of the world community. So some of these outlining areas that used to be remote, like Saba, as an example, which is a beautiful part of the country in the north, that they have tourism now. People want to see the caverns. They want to see, the way the old houses used to be built. And of course, when you get further north and you get into everything from, the harbors to the trails to the food, it's just become a wide open society. And when you see a Starbucks or you see a little Marriott sign somewhere, you're like, okay, the West has landed again. But for the most part, they really have brought together the country. Now it's taken a lot of years, I think, to get the unification that we're looking for.
Now there are two questions that I have. First of all, um, I'll go into my. It's probably not a bad thing or a good thing to do because it's kind of is my my dialect of. So you go to a communist country, they're communists, they're commies over there. What are you doing over there? And
Yeah.
so I guess my question is, they are quote unquote a communist country, but they've got
Yes.
Starbucks and they've embraced a little bit of the West as far as their economic status and what they're trying to get done. Is private ownership allowed there and that kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah, there are people, well, they've had some success in private ownership where people have had acquired property. They've had failure where they've gone in and overbuilt on a lot of areas. Like there's even large sections of ghost towns that were sort of built, didn't get finished. And you see that, by the way, all over China as well. I mean, you can be on the train in China for 4 hours and you can see, hundreds of apartments and houses never finished. Vietnam does have a little bit of that. What's really different, though, is the system of communistic government does exist, but you don't know that by being there. When you're there traveling around and meeting people and sitting down and having espressos with people or having a bowl of pho or something, everyone's the same. Everybody just views it. And even the soldiers that man the corners that wave traffic through will stop and say hello to you. So it's a much more opener place than what people realize.
Do you think that over time, because of the westernization of the upswing in capitalism, that it will drive them into a different place than they ever were before?
I don't think so, because the whole point of Vietnam culture is that people have came and people have gone and we're still here. And it goes back 100 years where people have tried to conquer it, they try to colonize it, and everyone is the reason ultimately why foreign powers have failed is because everybody gets on the same page for a period of time and say, okay, now it's this people coming in, we're going to all rally and make it all go away in a matter of time. So their ability to mobilize themselves behind one banner is still very important today to them. Now that's because there is obviously a communistic rule set to it, but the way that they educate their kids, the way they put them through the pioneering programs, and I don't want to call it indoctrination, but they basically sell they sell the story very early to kids. So when they're growing up, even when they come here to come to America to go to the country, they still speak very highly of their homeland as well.
Do they find that do they find that our form of capitalism is a little chaotic and that there's a lot more uniformity over there and they know what to expect, where over here you really don't?
They're a little bit more harsher. Let's do a cross compare for a moment. If you compare, let's say, an example, South Korea and their conglomerates, and the United States and our corporations, and Vietnam, you're going to find that the tolerance for briberies and corruption is far taken more harshly there than in other countries. Other countries is more like it's just foregone conclusion. That's how you do business. In Vietnam, if you're going to try to take the stuff on the sidelines and take a little money down on the low, you're not going to be there very much longer, because it really does break up the entire process of what they're trying to do. And even some of their most established corporations, if you get caught doing something of that nature, you're not wearing a Brooks Brothers suit anymore. You're wearing a striped jammies, right? And they have no problem doing that to even a CEO, right? There's no political form of saying, well, I'm connected. Good luck. You're done. Other countries, it's more like, oh, you can buy your way out of trouble. Not there. They're very much into, and it's harsh, but at the same time, they're trying to build something. They're trying to be, a global player, and they want to do that without, so much riffraff.
Well, and I will tell you, I don't know what their gun laws are like there. Does everybody carry guns, or does nobody carry guns?
Nobody dares. Yeah, they'll carry a stick, but they won't carry a. No, no, they don't. It's not a gun culture at all. No, they're quite the because remember, they look at themselves think of themselves as a concave. It's like you have the country, which is just one big giant circle. Everybody's in the same circle, right? And so why would they need to carry weapons against themselves? And someone that is dumb enough to carry a gun is going to be treated extremely harsh.
Well, there's something to be said for that, because I'm willing to bet that they don't have mass shootings there.
They do, but it's quickly made as an example. It's very quickly, like it may happen like in the north somewhere, it may happen somewhere in one of the one of the outlying provinces, but when it does happen, there's an example to be made. It's not this parade them in front of television to do a get well tour. No, it's handled very directly, and so it does deter people from thinking twice about don't do that. And that's, I think, how they treat crime in general. Now, they do have crime, of course. They do have things that happen. What's interesting is they will. I noticed this when I was there the last time in 2014. I had my phone out while I was standing on the street, and it is very common for people on motor scooters to ride by and grab people's phones, except if you're a foreigner. If you're a foreigner, they won't even come near you. Now, among themselves, there's that potential of you being jacked by a fellow countryman, but in the foreign concept, no, they are treated extremely. If you do something to a foreigner that has some implication of ruining their image, they'll be treated far more harsher than if they do it among themselves.
Well, it's interesting. How long? So you were there last in 2014?
Yeah, I went there from 2012, and then 2013 and 14. I kind of made trips every 6 months there.
And tell us about the bike.
So that was one of the original reasons I went, and that actually was kind of the forerunner of the book. Was I really wanted to cycle Vietnam, and so I had a chance to sign up with a cycle tour there, and I cycled throughout Ho Chi Minh City, and there's 13 districts that make up Ho Chi Minh City, and I got to cycle in all 13 of them, along with going down towards the Cambodian border and then up around the Mekong Delta as well. But that was one of the original reasons I went, and that really is why, when you look at the book and you see the symbol, that's where Cycle Rider came from, right? The bike with the pen. So that actually started with, here I'm doing cycling, why not I write about it, right? So that kind of was the enclave of what became, the Cycle Rider series.
So as you're, excuse me, as you're riding around the countryside, did you see a lot of snakes?
Cobras, yes.
Oh, no, really? And another place I can't go. So you do.
Oh, well, yeah, you do, but it's like everything else. You don't stop and pet the lions at the zoo, right? You don't stick your hand in the cage and say, hey, this is cool, Lion King. No, you simply know how to avoid. Now, the good thing is that because a lot of the tour guides are obviously from Vietnam, and many from the Delta where a lot of the snakes are located, they know exactly how to handle them. They know exactly how to avoid. They know where to take tourists. Even when we rode a bike all the way to the Cambodian border, we were doing that during non-opium season. So where the opium harvest was going on and the smuggling was going on, the guy actually said, hey, if you come during this time of December, don't worry, there's nobody on the road at the time. So I timed it to go when it was not opium smuggling season. So, but I've heard that other times of the year, yeah, don't bother being on that road because it's very treacherous. But yeah, I mean, a lot of local tourist people will tell you, oh yeah, if you want to avoid cobras, we're not going to go on this waterfall tour, right? We're going to go over here instead. And so they're very, very conscious of us, obviously wanting to feel safe when we're there.
Yeah, because if I run into a cobra, I'm gonna pee my pants. That's a fact. Mm.
Yeah, no, they do very well on keeping you. There was one time we were riding near the border, and they said I wanted to go all the way up and see the giant temple in near Phnom Penh, and the guy goes, "No, you don't want to do that." And I'm like, well, he wouldn't tell me why. He just says no. So we went south instead, and then we came around, and I kind of was bummed out that I didn't get to see the big thing, but he goes, well, because there was a protest going on, and they didn't like Americans that day, and I said, thank you. So he was very like not wanting to tell me, so I didn't like freak out. But we got 50 kilometers away, and he's like, "Okay, here's why we didn't go." And I'm like, "Thank you." So I give him an extra tip and thank him for that.
So there still is a segment of the population that holds us responsible for what happened, or is that why they were protesting?
No, it was more about um, China has a big influence in Cambodia now. There's a lot of
Oh.
money going in there, a lot of industrial things. There, a lot of the casinos are being built in Cambodia. They're built by Chinese, so they were kind of saying down to America, the regular weekly chant. But it was more about other countries influencing Cambodia, and so he said, "You don't want to be anywhere near this." I'm like, "Thank you, appreciate it. You're
Well,
my guy."
Southeast Asia has gone through with the Khmer Rouge and with some of that's how you say it, right?
Hmm.
Khmer Rouge, yeah,
Yes,
and a lot of the the, the the death and mayhem. It's amazing how
yes,
resilient they must be as human
yes.
beings to come back from all of that.
Yes. Well, one of the questions that was posed to me, and I did put this in the book, which was a true story, was I actually had a chance to meet a nice Vietnamese lady in a technology conference in Los Angeles once. And I asked her about her culture. I said, how old is Vietnam? And she looked at me and says, how old do you think Vietnam really is? I thought, I read the history books, 5,000 years. She goes, that's what the Chinese want you to believe. We've been around for 10,000 years. So when you think about a culture like us, has been around 289 years or something like that, we're a speckle of dirt compared to people that have been around for 10,000 years. So when you realize they've been around that long, they've been through how many wars, how many famines, how many cyclones, how many typhoons, how many wars, and they're still a country, that speaks volumes of not only what's within their DNA, but just knowing that when somebody decides to come on their shores, they're all going to rally together.
I'm really impressed that you went there and to do all that because that would scare me. I'm I
Right.
like to think I'm a tough guy, but no, that stuff would scare me.
It was
So
quite
congratulations.
a lot of thank you, but a lot of people that have been there. I mean, when President Clinton went there in 2000, he was the very first president to go after the Vietnam War. So that was very commendable of him to do that. But it also opened up the door to say, if I can come here, everybody can come here. And I think that was really that spoke volumes of it. And that also created the idea of trade. It created the idea of, well, what exactly is there? And I think one of the really fun things about Vietnam that many people don't realize is that Google, Cisco, a lot of American companies have offices there. They have technology centers. They have gone in and said, boy, there's a lot of software engineers here. There's a lot of potential here of artificial intelligence and development. And so they've created development centers throughout the country. So not only is it really embracing the next generation technology, but their people are learning, they're studying, they're getting educated, they're putting forth the efforts, and it's great to see a Google land and say, no, we're going to build something right here, we're going to build something in Da Nang, and to see it be successful, I think that's very cool.
It strikes me that we think that we've been around for a long time and stuff like that. Well, the reality is, and it's like if you now you've been up and around the Hanoi area, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, for those of you who don't remember, we had something called a B-52 in
Hmm.
1971, 1972, and we had
Hmm.
something called carpet bombing. and
Yes.
they went to North Vietnam and
Mhm.
by the truckload of airplanes, and they
Mhm.
dropped bombs all over the place. All that's gone now. Is
Yes.
that right? Have they recovered
Well,
from all of
they
that destruction?
They have, but the other part of the story you're referring to is Operation Linebacker 1 and Linebacker 2, where they tried to build a bomb them into submission to get them back to the peace table.
Right.
And the other part of the story that a lot of people don't realize is that the Russians and Chinese and Cubans were manning many of the rockets and missiles that were shooting the B-52s down. So we lost a lot of planes during that time, and a lot of crew members were lost during that time by trying to bomb Hanoi and Halong and all the other areas around Hanoi. But when you go there today and you walk around, it's all now been recovered, but a lot of it wasn't damaged. It was strategic areas were damaged, but there was a lot of it was still a lot of the history is still there. But they still have a museum. There's a War Remembrance Museum in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City. You can go visit. There's the Imperial Palace that you can go take a tour of, and you do see. The Hanoi Hilton is still there in Hanoi, where the prisoner war camp was there. You still see that, and you have to go in with kind of an open mind. If you go in with an attitude of saying, "Oh, you guys really torched us," it's like, well, we invaded, we showed up, right? And of course, you're going to defend your homeland. So if you take an open mind to any place you go, and realize you're not in America anymore, you're in somebody else's neighborhood, be be respectful, be according. And so I did tour all those museums, and I saw the planes in the museum and the helicopters and stuff that they had laying around and radios and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different time. But yeah, no, Hanoi is a beautiful city, a very, very well developed city.
Is our so many movies have been done about the Hanoi Hilton and the prison camps in Vietnam.
Mhm.
Are those true to life? I mean, were those facilities actually like that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
And so yeah.
well, Senator John McCain was a prisoner of war there.
Yeah.
When he was a naval officer as well, and his father was an admiral. And there was other famous stories about the Hanoi Hilton as well, and how long people were kept there, and the torturing and things like that as well. Yeah, no, it's a very sad part of the history for sure.
Well, and I'm just glad that we are now on speaking terms with them, and
Yes.
we've got Starbucks, and we've got Cisco, and we got all these companies that are there working with them, and I think that's how it should be. We never should have, in my humble opinion, about because I grew up in the '60s. You're much younger
Mhm.
than me. You probably don't remember
Not by
any of
much. No, I'm 59 on Saturday, my friend.
that.
I
You were just a kid because I remember in 1967, 1968,
mean,
uh, we would watch the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite,
Dirk
and
Cronkite.
yes, and he was, and they showed Vietnam and
Mhm.
all of the things that were going on there, and then of course there was the war protests here, and then
Yes.
all those kids that were being sent there. I can't imagine 18, 19, 20-year-old drafted kids that were
Mhm.
then expected to go into the jungles of Vietnam to fight, and it was a bad time. It was a bad time for us.
Was.
I'm afraid.
Agreed. And I think that to your point, should we not have been there? I think that what came about the Pentagon Papers when that first got disclosed later on in life, when we had a chance to read that, and how McNamara and a lot of the politicians weren't exactly telling the full extent of the story, and they were trying to sell the narrative. We should be there. If we're not there, it's going to be Vietnam, then it's going to be Thailand, then it's going to be Singapore, and it was a fallacy story that was sold back in the 40s when World War II ended, and suddenly it's going to be the Great Cold War. This is just a subset of it. And it was a total disaster. It was not worth 3 million people on the Vietnamese side dying and 57,000 of our troops dying for the sake of what? And I sadly say that because when you look at Afghanistan after 20 years, and Iraq is now a failed state, and Libya is a failed state, Syria is a failed state, it all goes back to what exactly did we do to want to go in there to begin with? What did we see in there other than greed, greed, and more greed? And in Vietnam was, like I mentioned about the resources. It all started with the Japanese and the Chinese and the French and then us and the Khmer Rouge and then everybody else went in saying, "Hey, if we can just get in there and get all that rubber, we're going to be fantastic." No, you're not. You're going to pay a lifetime, and you're going to destroy a big part of the culture, the world culture around that. So no, I didn't think we ever belonged there either.
Yeah, they called that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they called that the domino effect.
Yes.
When
Right.
they thought that North Korea and was a communist state, and then North Vietnam, and they were going to take it one bit by one bit, and then they were going to go
Right.
to the Philippines, and
Yes.
then I would have loved to see them try and take over Australia or something like that. That wouldn't have gone well at all.
No, no, but I do think that, when you think about the time, because you and I are almost contemporaries. You had the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King going on at the same time. You had protests in Vietnam going on. You had no trust in government. You had decisions being made that were based on a fraction of the truth, not the full truth. And we haven't changed. We're still in that same boat, 45, 50 years later, that we're still making decisions to go into Iraq when we should never even been there. I had the chance of actually meeting, not directly, Colin Powell once after the Iraq War. I was actually working for a tech company. He was a keynote. And one of the employees got up and grabbed the microphone and says, "General, I have to ask you a question. Did we have enough troops?" And he came out and goes, "No." So if Colin Powell at his level, after the Iraq invasion in '03, come out and said we did not have enough, can you imagine everybody below him and what they thought of the whole party? And that was what, 20 years after Vietnam. So to still have that mindset that we can show up and own the world and own the party is like, move on, and it doesn't work like that anymore. People are willing to sacrifice everything for not to be controlled by a foreign power. And Vietnam taught us that, and we never learned our lesson from that.
And we still haven't. I'm afraid. I'm
Yeah,
hopeful that we are going to be done with that kind of thing, because wars change now. You
they have.
it's different. But enough of that. Let's
No, no,
talk about
actually, that's a fair, no, no, that's a fair question. It's a fair comment, because last time you and I had a wonderful dialogue about artificial intelligence. And that
yes.
was before ChatGPT came out. And you and I were talking before the big announcement of OpenAI and how that was coming out, and Microsoft was going to drop a bunch of money in. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember it well. And so what was interesting about our last dialogue that I thought was important was cybersecurity is about warfare. We have already been at war with China and Russia and everybody else for years. It's just not the battle that you think. It's the battle of stealing data, identity, credit cards, people's mortgages. It's a whole different other warfare that's been going on for many, many years. And I still write about it every day in my blogs. Is that's really the next generation warfare. We just haven't come to grips with, we really are at war with China, and then they're at war with us, but we can still go over there and vacation in Beijing and hang out, but we're still technically at war with them, at least from a cybersecurity side.
Exactly. I got to ask you, because of your experience in cybersecurity, what the hell is up with the balloons?
So I think what's funny about the balloon is I haven't wrote it yet. I was actually thinking of putting into a blog for one of my clients, but the idea of the balloon is no different than what cybersecurity experts and CISA people face every day. They face 100 balloons every day. Every day, somebody's trying to get in to steal information. They're trying to get database. I mean, the last hack a couple of weeks ago was somebody jacked into a company that does background checks. What a great harvest of data, right? So when you see the fact that that's going on, the balloon to me was kind of more symbolic of, they've already been doing that already. It just hasn't been a balloon. It's been, through people's emails, or, impersonating, people like you and I, and getting into our emails and finding all this troubling information. But the balloons were just, I think, a symbol of, we're going to try this. We're going to see how weak you guys really are. And I was blown away that they let the whole thing go all the way to South Carolina, wherever it was, and they finally shot it down. It's like, if we sent a balloon that way, it would have been shot down 50 miles before it even got to the border. So I don't know what that was all about, to be honest with you. But cybersecurity people face balloons every single day, for sure.
It's so interesting, because when we were talking about the political divide in this country is like, those damn Democrats, they let the thing go all the way across the country. And then we find out that, well, we hadn't been looking for that before, and now
Yeah.
they've got signatures going back into the Trump administration that said that they were doing the same things there. We just didn't know that they were doing that then.
Right.
So it is remarkable when you get into the type of work that you do,
Mhm.
how pervasive it is and how widespread it is and how it's a daily battle every day. When's that book coming out, by the way?
Well, so I get asked often from people, when is the, what is called threat modeling team sport? I have been working on that. It's really about sums and stories of cyber war. One of the opening chapters I wrote is, I said, "Did you get that email from Nigeria that you won $1 million?" And half the people in my focus group raised their hand and said, "Yeah, by the way, I did." I said, "Well, don't worry, you didn't win." So, but that is cyber warfare, and long lost relative you haven't seen since you were 4 that said you just inherited a bunch of money, but he needs your bank account information to send you the money. So I do have that real book coming out in 2024. That's going to be a John Gormley, which is my real name. My real name in real life is John Gormley, actually. That's the book will come under my real name, where Patrick Greenwood will be my fictional work.
I interviewed a gal several months ago now that was taken with a guy that was via email. They met in a chat room and they got to know each other and talk to each other. And he was a doctor from England and he was working overseas because he just felt the call to do that, and that he was a really good guy. But he did his when he was like in Nigeria or someplace, and he said, my bank account got locked up and so I can't get home, and my wife is ill in England and I need to go see her and my kids and stuff. Can you help? She ended up helping him to the tune of $1.2 million over time. And then he stopped communicating with her. And then
Of
she
course.
heard from a guy in Ethiopia who was that guy. And they're trained to do this thing where they can get into people's hearts and into
Yes.
their bank account, and they're not who they pretend to be at all.
Yes.
Is
Yeah, we
that
just
common?
hit that. It is, because just the other day was Valentine's Day, and a lot of what they call romantic scams come out at Valentine's Day. People are lonely, and someone's paying attention to them, or someone's responding to them. But those campaigns, those attack campaigns, start months before. They start with a very simple, "Hey, that's really a cute picture of you on Facebook," or, "Hey, you know what? Congratulations on your promotion on LinkedIn." So it starts very subtly, and then it kind of builds up. "Oh, I noticed you're single. Oh, you're living in Kansas. Oh, man, I went to University of Kansas." And so when you start seeing that, it's a build up to where they eventually, to your point, they get to that score. And part of when you're doing cybersecurity awareness training is to really teach employees and students and others to say, look, when you see somebody who comes out of nowhere that wants to have the relationship or just want to say hi to you, think twice. Because unless they, you don't know this person, you have no idea where they're coming from, they're catfishing you from somewhere, hit delete, mark as spam, and move on. Don't worry, you'll find somebody that'll love you someday. Don't worry, there's plenty of people out there, but not through the airwaves of internet. And I think as more people are getting burned, and there's no recovery from that. You can't go to the FBI and say, "Hey, I just gave somebody $1 million." They're like, "So what do you want us to do about it?" There's no recovery from that.
No, there isn't. I had to laugh on Facebook occasionally because I don't know if I'm a public figure, but I'm out there a little bit. And occasionally I'll get a friend request from a person who claims to be a young lady. And I don't know them. I've never met them. So I generally will go on their Facebook page and look at their friends, and all of them were old people like me, old men
Yes,
like me, because what they're trying to do is to get you involved in a relationship with them
that's correct.
so that then they can take your money.
Correct. And then if you look on LinkedIn, I get a lot of requests from people that claim that they're like a managing director of Estee Lauder, or they're a global purchasing agent for Macy's. And I'm like, yeah, but why are you living in Topeka, Kansas? And so you sort of, if you play it out for 5 minutes, you do the 5-minute rule, never respond to anything within 5 minutes. Do the 5-minute rule, process what's going on. And there's a reason why there's an ignore button there in LinkedIn. Hit the ignore button and move on, because that's really where the identity and sort of the impersonational attacks really are starting to come.
Yeah, and I really got creeped out because this one gorgeous picture. She was half dressed at the time, but it was a gorgeous picture of her, and I got to thinking, what if this is a 300-pound man sitting on a bed
Sitting in a jail in Syria.
Yeah, and he's claiming to be this beautiful girl, and I'm
Yeah.
talking to him like he's a beautiful young lady. I was like, no,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I don't need to
Click,
do that.
delete, 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 of course.
Exactly. And is there so much of this stuff that I pay I don't know what it is, a couple $100 a year for like Norton to protect my security and stuff. Do those
Yeah.
things work?
Yes, they do. And what they're doing is, so Norton acquired a company to do that, which was LifeLock. LifeLock, you
Ah,
basically put in your social security number, your driver's license number, your bank account information, credit card. And I actually added my wife as well. So my wife and I share a family account. And I said, this is phenomenal because they need that information to open credit. Now, if the creditor, however, allows an account to be open, even with you having LifeLock, then LifeLock not only will protect you, but the creditor's going to have to eat it. So if somebody mistakenly opens a name under my name and says, "Oh, I now have a credit card under his name," I said, "Well, how did you open it?" Well, we went to some really small regional local bank and found a way to get a credit card. Well, guess what? That wasn't me. Number one. Number two is I'm protected by LifeLock. So good luck. And number three, the credit card company is going to have to eat it because they did not have enough safety controls in order to prevent something like that from happening. But yeah, no, I definitely encourage people using programs like that.
why is it that we are sometimes so, I hate the word stupid, maybe uninformed, because because and the reason I say that is one time, I was getting a tax return and it didn't come and it didn't come and it didn't come. So I finally called
Mhm,
and got a hold of somebody finally. And they said,
mhm,
"Oh, no, that was sent a month and a half ago." And I
mhm,
said, "Well, I didn't get it." And they said, "Well, you've got a canceled check here." And so then I get this call from Chehalis, Washington, which is a small town 100 miles
mhm,
south of Seattle.
mhm,
Older guy gets on and says, how come you sucked the feds on me? Because you came into my store with
mhm,
the government check."
mhm.
And I said, "That's all." And you said that's all you had. And so I took pity on you and cashed your check that wasn't
Mm.
even. And I said, "Didn't you get ID?" He said his wallet was stolen. He didn't have any ID. It's like,
Oh man.
and he was a store owner. It was like, oh, come on, please, really? And it was, 300-400 bucks
Mhm.
that he ended up having to eat because
Yes.
he cashed a check that he should never have cashed.
Yes. And banks are starting to be that way when it comes to loans. They're starting to be that way with home mortgage, with people trying to get a mortgage. When people are trying to transfer trust deeds, they don't take this, oh, I can just call Steve and Steve will pick up the phone. Steve better drag his little tail into the bank and be Steve. And now they're checking multiple IDs, not just the passport, but now they're checking the driver's license. Now there's third party services to validate your passport. And the reason why is because ultimately the financial institutions end up eating a lot of that for not having the right controls in place. And you're right. A lot of it is a little bit of us because we're just being ignorant, but it does come back to the financial institutions having to be regulated more. And also, more importantly, they have to have the controls and spend the money on these controls. And you'd be shocked on some of them don't. Some claim, oh, you know what, we just can't afford it. It's on our budget. Doesn't matter. You're still going to be responsible if something goes wrong. So yeah, that guy, he deserves to eat the $300 if he didn't require a driver's license to cash a check.
Yeah, because the guy wasn't me, so he didn't have the stuff. Why is it though that businesses still allow somebody to make a purchase online without having necessary backup information? Because that's happened to me as well, where I get this notification that somebody in New Jersey just spent
Yes.
$400 at this particular store, and
Mhm.
and the reason they flagged it is because they know that I've never been to New Jersey.
Yes.
But why do businesses because they ended up having to eat that. Why
They
do they
do.
do that?
They do, and well, a lot of it comes back to what the hackers are going to go try to find not an Amazon, not a Fidelity, not a Bank of America, or any of the really hardcore online systems. They're going to try to find a very simple startup online retailer that maybe is a buyer that has like eBay or something like that, and they'll target that one because they probably won't require the 3-digit code, the 4-digit PIN, what is your home address, what is your zip code, and things like that. They may just get by with just simply the number and the name and the expiration date, which easily could be stolen. So that's why it really goes back to the retailers being responsible for forcing these types of controls of happening. And I think that that's why when you do shop online, you shop online in places that do have requirements of asking you, what's your address? What is this? What's the 3-digit code? What's the 4-digit code? Right? What's your zip code? Because ultimately they don't want to be responsible for it. And when people say, "Oh, I'm going to buy this from an overseas e-commerce site," don't do it. I don't care if you're getting it for 90% off. Don't do it. It's probably counterfeit, but don't do it either. So,
my son thought he had some extra electronic equipment, gaming equipment and stuff, and he said, "Well, I'll just put it on eBay. That'll work. I'll just put it on eBay." And so he sold something. He sold a controller, and the controller he boxed it up and sent it, and it was in good shape. When the person got it, they said it was broken, and
yes.
so he said, "No, it wasn't. It was in perfect shape." What they had done is they had a broken controller. They went
Yes.
and they online and they found somebody to sell them the good controller. Then they got the good controller, put the bad controller in the box, and said, "This was broken when we got it. I want a refund." What can you do
Yes.
about that?
Nothing. There's not. I mean, it's a risk, and sadly, eBay used to be a lot of fun. eBay still is a very good site for people that want to have a little side business. I'm a fan of eBay. I'm a fan of Amazon as well. But yes, there is a lot of, and Macquarie is another site that's out there as well that does this. People put products online all the time on different e-commerces. Some people make a good living doing it, but if you're going to put an expensive bag out there, like a Chanel bag or something, and try to get 10 grand for it, and someone says, "Oh, it came with a scratch," chances are, unless you find the little serial number that's attached to the bag, you're going to be out 10 grand. So, yeah, it's the reality is that if it can be exploited, hackers are going to find a way to exploit it.
Why people are awfully inventive, aren't they?
Yes, they are. There's money to be made.
And money is the do all and be all of everything. It's
Absolutely. Sad but
integrity be
true.
damned.
Yep.
As it really is a shame. It gets to the point where I deal with Amazon directly, but I won't
Hmm.
deal with anybody else. This weird thing happened to me just the other day. I want to bring this up because it's I think it's important for people to understand. My TV broke. And so I bought another TV and I got a decent deal from a company, but it was online and they were going to ship it to
Hmm.
me. And they use um, private contractors as rather than employees. They use private contractors as delivery drivers. You know where I'm going with this.
Absolutely.
And so it was supposed to be delivered on a particular day. It wasn't. I looked online and it said delayed, and the next
Hmm.
day it was delayed. And so I got in the habit of looking for this because I was wanting my TV because I had none. And
Right.
and so I go online and it said delivered. So I go, great, it's here. So I go out front. It's not there. It was an
Yeah.
$850 TV. It's not there. So I go looking around the block. It's not there. It's not anywhere. And so I call the shipper and say,
Hmm.
I know that you said that it just showed up, or it showed up a half hour ago or 45 minutes. It's not here. They said, well, let's call the
Hmm.
driver. So they called the driver and they said, we'll get back to you. 15 minutes later, the driver pulled up in his van with my TV because he got
Wow.
caught on because there's the fact is if somebody drops something at your door, and with COVID it happens all the time, if somebody drops
Right.
something at your door and it's not there when you go for it, you have no recourse
None.
unless
Well, the good thing is that there's a because it's happened, there is a recourse now. Thankfully, you go back to the original place that you purchased it, and they made the decision to use a third party in order to deliver your good. They actually would be the one responsible. Plus, if you call your credit card company and say, "Here's what happened," 9 and 10 times they're going to reverse the charge. Particularly if the major retailer decided to use a third party that they chose to use, that didn't deliver your property, you can easily get your credit card to reverse it, especially if it never even showed up at your door.
And then I had another one. I got a million of them because of COVID and because I live alone here. I have my groceries delivered. I just
Mhm,
assume not go to the grocery store and the
mhm,
mask and all that stuff. So I get this notification from Amazon that the groceries have been delivered. I go, great. Go to the front, nothing there. And so I not a thing. So I called Amazon and got their
mhm,
customer service department, and they said, "Well, let's call the driver and find out where it is or what
mhm.
happened." So they called the driver, and the driver said, "Well, a lady came to the door and picked it up." And I said, "Well, that's pretty inconvenient. Can you tell me what she looks like?" And she said, "Well, no, we don't have a picture." And I said, "Well, if she's cute, I'll take her, but she doesn't live here. I have no idea." So he had gone to this is what is insidious. He'd gone to the wrong house. And these are groceries, by the way. So
Right.
she doesn't know what she's getting, but this
Perishable.
perishable stuff. Person came out of the house and said, "Oh, these are mine." And because she came out and got them directly, he didn't take a picture. So we have no idea where they ended up. But to be but Amazon was very gracious
Yeah,
and they redelivered the product within 5 hours.
yeah,
So
professional.
yeah, but I can't but the cost of doing business must be enormous.
Well, but it's gathering. That was a time in which people did not want to go. Now that COVID is sort of on the reverse, people are getting out, they're shopping again, they're going to malls, they're going to movies again to some degree. But yeah, I still think that they're seeing the lower of the times right now. They're not seeing the volumes they saw before.
Which is good because that means that I ordered groceries this morning and I got them this afternoon. So
You'll get them for sure.
I'm very happy about that. By the way, we were talking with Patrick Greenwood. He's the author of Sunrise in Saigon. I really encourage you to get that book, and also go to his website because he also does coffee, and he'll
Yes,
he'll get you some coffee, and all the proceeds go to helping kids in Vietnam get a bicycle helmet so they don't get killed by that cart that's in front of them.
that's correct.
So I really
That's the cause.
appreciate what you're doing. That's
Thank you.
really awesome.
Thank you, Kevin,
That
very much.
I really enjoy having you on, we had a friend of yours come on the show, and we're gonna have her on again. I can't pronounce her name very Para, but
Parasu. Parasu.
yes, and she is, and if you would like to shout out for her book, that would be good too, because
Oh yeah, no, she wrote an amazing book about her journey from Afghanistan. Trying called Identity. And when she wrote her book, it was about her journey of a young girl leaving Afghanistan. This is during when the Russians invaded. This wasn't our time. It was 20 years before that. So when she did her story about journey from Afghanistan, a quest of identity, it really was about her journey of going into Europe, and then from there she eventually settled in Canada. But the storyline that really made Parasu an amazing writer was that the fact that she took so many jobs. She was what, a retailer, a seamstress, a dentist, hygienist. I mean, she worked in a kitchen. She did everything possible, and it was just an amazing story of not only her, but how she met her husband and her children as well. And now she's settled in Canada. But she's a wonderful friend. I love her book. She's written very, very well. I'm encouraging her to write more because I thought her book was an incredible, wonderful memoir as well. But yeah, I'm glad that she came on your show as well.
I got to tell you, Patrick, we are so lucky living in the United States. When the story of how she grew up in Afghanistan, especially with the Taliban and with the
Yes,
Sharia law and all of that stuff, and so that she survived it, and her brothers and sisters also made it out, and that kind of stuff. But it takes a lot of guts to be able to do that.
very,
Well, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, and I'm
yes.
glad that people like her and you are bringing it to light. You make me almost want to go to Vietnam now.
Well, I wish you would. I think you would have a ball. I think you would see the same. I think you would come back with a much different perspective of like everybody else. You have to see it, you got to feel it, you got to smell it, and you got to go, wow, this is exactly what I didn't think it was going to be. And thankfully for that, because now I have my own perspective. But no, Kevin, you're a great host. You run a great podcast. Thank you for getting writers like myself on your show. You've got a great audience of people, and you're just a wonderful host. And thank you for helping us get some visibility to our work as well.
Well, you are so welcome. Will you come back and visit me again?
Absolutely. I when the second book comes out, when Codename Dragon Ball comes out, I'd love to get on your show and talk about that book as well.
Absolutely. Even the audiobook, I would love to have you back to talk about that as well.
Love to be on again.
Yeah. So before we go, is there anything that you would like to tell our audience, those that are listening now and those that will be tuning in the future?
Absolutely. So if you want to check out the book, go to my website, sunriseinsaigonnovel.net. I have my movie trailer up there as well, so you can be able to see a nice little 1-minute clip of what potentially could be a movie. The book is available on Amazon.com. It's done very well. It is on Barnes & Noble. It's on Walmart.com as well. And it's on Goodreads. So if you're familiar with Goodreads, please leave a nice review as well. But coffee site is CycleWriter, 3, espresso.com. As Kevin mentioned, all proceeds of the book and the coffee goes to Helmets for Kids in Vietnam.
Very nice, and I want to thank you again for being here. I was just while we were talking, I was just struck by. Do you remember Robin Williams with "Good Morning Vietnam"? You remember that?
Yes.
When near the end of the movie, he said, "This isn't going to look good on a resume." I miss him.
I do. But you know what's funny? You know, the real underlining story to that was Pat Sajak in real life.
Really?
Did you not know that?
Yes. I did not know that.
So Pat Sajak, way before Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak was in fact a DJ in Vietnam during the war. And he's the one that dubbed. Now, he wasn't the same Robin Williams type character from what I was told the story of. But the story I was told was Pat Sajak actually was a DJ in Vietnam that said "Good Morning Vietnam," but he didn't do it with the same obviously bravado. But that actually was Pat Sajak was the original "Good Morning Vietnam."
Now that's good to know. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that becomes a trivia question. You can win some money with that if you use that. So
now you know. It is a true story that Pat Sajak was a kind of a loose depiction of him. When Robin Williams did Good Morning Vietnam and was up for the Academy Award for that. But a lot of people don't realize that before that, he really was imitating life as Pat Sajak was that DJ.
That is remarkable. I've learned a ton today, but I've learned something else that I'll use that in the future. I will tell you. So
that would be a good trivia question for sure.
Exactly. Patrick Greenwood has been our guest, and go to his website, which again is
www.sunriseinsaigonnovel.net, and for coffee it is www.cyclewriter 3espresso.com.
And the coffee is really good.
Yes, this is Kevin's bag. He just doesn't know it yet, but it's on its way. So thank you again. And everyone, check out the book as well. It's available on Amazon.com as well.
It is a beautiful cover on that thing, by the way.
So when you read the book, you and I are going to get on together. I want you to read the book, enjoy it, write a nice review for me if you can. But remember this picture. And then after you finish the book, I'm going to ask you a question. What was so important about the cover? How is the cover important to the story? So when you read the book and you look at the cover, after you finish the story, you'll go, so you're going to have that moment for sure. But yes, after you read the book and you say, I still don't get the cover, trust me, you'll get the cover. Cover has a very important meaning to the book.
You know what that means is you've done podcasts. You're a podcaster. I can't bullshit you and say, "Oh, read the book, it's great and everything," because now you're going to ask me a question about it. So
I will. It's okay. What's important about the cover then, huh? And I'll know pretty quickly if you read it or not.
Exactly. That's a great way of finding out. So,
absolutely.
Patrick, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you, and we'll be in touch again very soon. Again, Patrick Greenwood. Author, Sunrise in Saigon. Get the book, buy the coffee, help somebody other than yourself. Okay. So,
thanks for having me on. It's a wonderful day.
Indeed. Thank you. If you wait right there, I'll be right back, sir. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of PositiveTalkRadio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named PositiveTalkRadio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to